This is my capstone project. What I'm going to be doing is arguing for the necessity of having a biblically integrated worldview for Christians in a counseling profession. So why argue for integration? Well, there are a lot of good reasons to integrate your faith into the way you counsel, but for me there are really three that I think are the most important. And the first one is I really see the limitations of secular counseling. What secular counseling tries to do is it tries to alleviate pain and suffering and give people the resources they need in order to live a life that's full, purposeful, and self-actualizing, as Maslow would have said. But you see, here's the thing. Secular counseling and the theories that we've learned with this entire year, they can't produce that change. They can't give people the ability to change themselves. They can give people short-term solutions for problems that only inward transformation can solve. So the second thing is I understand that transformation produces change, not behavior modification, right? And as a Christian, we understand that if we're going to be changed as people, if we're going to have character that's more good, that's more kind, that has more peace with other people, we need something to happen inside of us. And a secular counselor, they don't share this worldview. They would counsel based on helping people become more happy, be more satisfied with life, all these things that are good, but ultimately the end goal is not to change their inward being. Their end goal is to help them be more satisfied with the life that they have. And the last thing is something that I hope we all share as followers of Christ. I care deeply about people's eternities. You know, people come to counseling because they want their problems to be fixed, or they want a situation in their life to change. They want to feel better about themselves. But ultimately, what they really need is to be redeemed and put into a relationship with their Creator, with God, with Jesus Christ. And that's the only relationship that is going to fuel and give them long-term satisfaction in life that will help them consistently overcome the things that life throws at us, the problems, whether it's a diagnosis of a disorder or a condition, whatever it is. It's only Christ that will give us the tools we need to be able to have true victory in life. So I think what the church in America and a lot of the Western nations have seen is there's a real tension regarding the counseling profession. Typically, what most Christians think is that it's an either-or type of thing. Either we do Christian counseling, which is where people come and they're in an extensively Christian environment. They're talking about God and Jesus and sin, and it's very apparent that it's very religious. Or there's secular counseling, which includes a lot of the theories that we would have learned about in the past few years. For example, psychoanalysis or Gestalt therapy or the person-centered approach. Those would be the techniques that would be used in a secular setting, and there wouldn't be any bridging of the two between faith and that type of counseling. So what I am arguing for is really a third approach, not Christian counseling, not secular counseling that is completely removed of a biblical worldview or ideology, but an approach where a Christian can implement their faith and implement their biblical worldview into how they approach counseling. So what I believe needs to happen is that Christians who are thinking about entering into the counseling field, they need to figure out how they're going to allow their biblical worldview to really drive their counseling practice. They shouldn't remove themselves from counseling and go into just a pastoral or a exclusively Christian counseling environment. They need to be able to integrate. I think the only way for a Christian to holistically impact their clients is by biblical integration. I really believe that biblical integration is the only way for a Christian to holistically impact the clients that they're going to serve in the counseling field. Now, I want to define holistically because it's a word that I use a lot in my paper. You can see the definition on the screen, but really what I mean is it's an understanding that human beings are both cognitive, emotional, but they're also spiritual. And the spiritual aspect of human nature is not one that a secular counselor would tend to think about. They would understand the cognitive and emotional and physical, the biological aspects of humans, but they would not adhere to the fact that humans are also spiritual. And it's in the spiritual nature that we find the root of all mankind's problems. So we understand that the world is broken, right? People come to counseling because they encounter problems in their life. And as counselors, we're going to see things like depression, pain, anxiety, fear, suicide, emotional trauma, eating disorders, cognitive disorders, bipolar disorders, sexual abuse, marital unfaithfulness, self-harm, judgment, suffering, and death. So what counseling tries to do is it tries to bring all of these problems into a perspective so that a client is able to overcome them. But the thing is, all of these things that happen in life that lead people into counseling, they can't be overcome by a simple theory. They're much greater than that. So what we have to do is we have to ask the question, why are all these things existing in the world in the first place? As Christians, we know the answer is simple. It's sin. So what a secular counselor will do is they'll ask, well, how do we overcome these things? And they'll use a lot of different types of theories, like these theories that are just scattered on the screen. And you see, the thing is, these theories aren't bad, they just don't have the power to give the people the change that they actually need. So we as Christians, we know where that power comes from, right? It's through the cross. It's only through a relationship with Jesus that people are able to be inwardly and holistically transformed. So then what happens is, as we integrate our biblical worldview into our counseling profession, we start to change our goal from just helping a client alleviate their problems to pointing them in the direction where they can find ultimate redemption and transformation. You see, I think the concept is really simple. We take our biblical worldview and then we integrate it into our clinical counseling, and that will allow us to give hope to our clients. You see, these theories and techniques, they are great tools, and they should be used as supplements to our integrated worldview, not the means by which people change, but they should be able to be tools that we can use to help us expose the need for clients to be transformed, not just find temporary solutions to their problems. So at this point, I hope that I've convinced you that there is an extreme need for Christians to be able to know how to integrate their biblical worldview into their clinical counseling practice. You see, we as followers of Christ, we understand that human lives, they're much more than clients, right? They're created beings that have an eternal destiny. And if we as counselors, if we can help counsel in a way that will allow them to ask questions that might raise an awareness to their greater need to be transformed and redeemed, then we will not only be able to alleviate their suffering or their pain or give them reasons to cope or to continue living, but we'll be able to point them in the direction that will help them find the answers to the questions they're really looking for.